balls to resist the rushing.
Wait. Shh. It's the Film Flamers.
Hey everybody, I'm Robert.
And I'm Chris.
And we are
the Film Flamers.
Oh, that was almost perfect.
Wow, we didn't even plan that.
It's like we're in sync.
We didn't plan that at all, just like this movie didn't plan
Oh, God.
to ever be seen.
We're already trashing it. Of course, we're here today to talk about The Exorcist II.
The Heretic.
Which is a 1977 American horror film directed by John Boorman and written by William
What? What was his
Goodhart.
name?
Boorman.
Yeah.
It's the sequel to the 1973 film The Exorcist and is the second film in the franchise, obvi. The movie is set 4 years after the events of the original and follows a now 16-year-old Reagan who is still recovering from her demonic possession.
Neither William Friedkin nor William Peter Blatty had any desire to involve themselves with the sequel, and while Ellen Burstyn refused outright to appear in the film, Linda Blair decided to reprise her role after the filmmakers agreed to some of her demands, such as not wearing any of the demonic makeup, which was so traumatic to her the first time around. Max von Sydow also reprised his role as Father Merrin in a series of flashbacks, and Richard Burton and Louise Fletcher also star.
I'm sure they regret it now. Well, Richard Burton doesn't regret it anymore. He regrets it from beyond the grave.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
He regrets a lot of things.
I'm sure.
Cleopatra. Excuse me.
Poor Liz Taylor. According to the film's co-producer, Richard Lederer, Exorcist II was conceived as a relatively low-budget affair. He said, quote, "What we essentially wanted to do with the sequel was to redo the first movie. Have the central figure, an investigative priest, interview everyone involved with the exorcism and then fade out to unused footage, unused angles from the first film. A low-budget rehash, about $3 million, of The Exorcist. A rather cynical approach to movie making, I'll admit, but that was the start." And the finish. No, just kidding.
Pazuzu, king of the evil spirits of the air, help me to find Kokomo. This is The Exorcist II.
4 years ago, The Exorcist shocked the world. Now, the struggle between good and evil goes on. Exorcist II, The Heretic. Linda Blair, Richard Burton, Louise Fletcher, Max von Sydow, James Earl Jones. Exorcist II, The Heretic.
Do you want to do a synopsis for this episode?
No.
I don't think we need to.
Blah, blah, blah. There.
Done.
The end.
You've got it. I mean, from the trailer and that synopsis, pretty much wraps it up. So The Exorcist II was released on June 17th, 1977, and at the time, it was Warner Brothers' biggest day-and-date launch, playing in 725 theaters in the U.S. and Canada. The movie was also a record opening for Warner Brothers, bringing in $6.7 million opening weekend. Poor word of mouth hampered the film's performance, and ultimately it would bring in a little more than $30 million against the budget of $14. A small profit, but nowhere near the success of the original.
I think it's funny, just before this recording, we looked up because Star Wars had just come out a month before this. It was made for 11 million, not 14, and it looks like it the way it does. You know, sans some meddling in the late 90s. And so this movie almost has no excuse.
No, it has none.
Well, it didn't have George Lucas, but you know.
I mean, like, Star Wars was nominated for Best Picture that year, so yeah. I mean, and made a hell of a lot more money.
Well, Boorman was no slouch, right? He was just up for Best Picture like a year or two before that, right?
Oh, for what?
Deliverance in 1972.
I didn't realize that he directed that movie.
Yeah, it was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, and also nominated for the Golden Globe Award for Best Director.
I mean, I like Deliverance. Maybe I should look into this director's work a little bit more.
And then right after this, he made Excalibur. So,
I have to take a lot of drugs to like that movie. No, it's good. I like it. The Exorcist II has a 10% on Rotten Tomatoes. with an audience score of 12%. The site's consensus reads, hokey mystical effects, lousy plotting, and worse acting directly tarnishes the first chilling legacy. The film received a strongly negative response. Reports indicated that the film inspired derisive laughter from the audience at its premiere in New York City. William Peter Blatty claimed to have been the first person to laugh in the theater in which he saw the film, only to be followed by the other patrons. Womp womp.
Variety wrote, Exorcist II is not as good as The Exorcist. It isn't even close. And BBC film critic Mark Kermode stated, Exorcist II is demonstrably the worst film ever made. It took the greatest film ever made and trashed it in a way that was on one level farcically stupid and on another level absolutely unforgivable. Everyone involved in this, apart from Linda Blair, should be ashamed for all eternity.
I mean... Oh my God, bad reviews are so funny. I enjoy the shit out of them. Speaking of which, Gene Siskel gave the film 0 stars out of 4 and declared it the worst major motion picture I have seen in almost 8 years on the job.
And this is my favorite one. Friedkin saw half an hour of the film, of course, him being the director of the first film. I was at Technicolor and a guy said, we just finished a print of Exorcist II. Do you want to have a look at it? And I looked at the first half hour of it and I thought it was as bad as seeing a traffic accident in the street. It was horrible. It's just a stupid mess made by a dumb guy, John Boorman by name, somebody who should be nameless, but in this case should be named Scurrilous, a horrible picture.
Jesus Christ.
Friedkin later said that the sequel diminished the value of the original, called it the worst piece of crap he's ever seen and a freaking disgrace. He later added, that film was made by a demented mind. But not his.
Right. I mean, there were no guns shooting, so he didn't like that movie.
Let Friedkin review you. Let Friedkin review you.
Let me.
Still works.
In a 2005 interview, Boorman remarked, quote, it all comes down to audience expectations. The film that I made, I saw as kind of a riposte to the ugliness and darkness of The Exorcist. I wanted a film about journeys that was positive, about good, essentially. And I think that audiences in hindsight were right. I denied them what they wanted, and they were pissed off about it. Quite rightly. I knew I wasn't giving them what they wanted, and it was really a foolish choice. The film itself, I think, is an interesting one. There's some good work in it. But when they came to me with it, I told John Cayley, who was running Warner Brothers then, that I didn't want it. Look, I said, I have daughters. I don't want to make a film about torturing a child, which is how I saw the original film. But then I read a 3-page treatment for a sequel written by a man named William Goodhart, and I was really intrigued by it because it was about goodness. I saw it then as a chance to film a repost to the first picture, but it had one of the most disastrous openings ever. There were riots, and we recut the actual prints in the theaters, about 6 a day, but it didn't help, of course, and I couldn't bear to talk about it or look at it for years.
Wow.
Even he doesn't really care for his movie.
You know, and I don't think it's without merit. I certainly don't think it's the worst movie ever made. Please.
No.
I think this had a huge expectations, especially in the 70s, right? It was funny because I felt like this was made a little bit later than I was surprised to see it actually was done in 1977. And a lot of things kind of made sense a little bit more. A lot of it's more of the time, of the zeitgeist. It's certainly not a timeless movie. It's very much a 70s movie.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. It's right around that cusp of change between like 70s and 80s. You know what I mean? It has that look to it.
Versus the first one's timeless, really.
Exactly.
I mean, outside of technology or whatever, that's just the setting. Versus, there's a very much like a spirit of the time in Exorcist II with, the music choices, the clothing, the style. I mean, the production design alone is just hugely 70s.
Yeah, very, very much. In the music from the trailer. You know what I mean?
Oh, my God.
Exorcist to go now.
Yes.
There are no accolades, clearly.
No, and no legacy.
Nope, none. Oh, so how do you want to talk about this movie?
It's hated more than Pazuzu.
Pazuzu won't even watch this movie. It has kind of a stacked cast. right?
It really does, you know. I mean, obviously John Boorman is a force in and of himself, right? But we got Linda Blair returning. We got Richard fucking Burton, as Father Philip again. They try to get Jack Nicholson, by the way,
Jesus,
and Louise Fletcher, who had just come off of her Oscar win for The One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
It's true,
and that would have been an interesting kind of matchup with her, you know, teaming up with Jack Nicholson for this if they had gotten him.
Oh my God, I can imagine now.
Yeah,
although I really don't see Jack Nicholson in that role.
No, I don't see him in many. I mean, like, but then we got also Max von Sydow coming back as Father Merrin, and we get to see him in kind of flashbacks and where he's a bit younger and things like that, because by now he's like, what, 48?
Yeah, just
in real life.
Right.
Yeah. And Kitty Wynn as Sharon Spencer, I didn't really even recognize her from the first movie.
She doesn't look anything like her original character. And I read somewhere that the only reason that she was in this movie is because they could not get Louise Fletcher and they wanted another person from the original. And they're like, oh, let's just bring that
Louise
character
Fletcher's
back.
in this. Do you mean Ellen Bernstein?
Because they could not get Ellen Bernstein to play the role, right, or come back for the movie.
No, she flatly refused. Everyone had such a terrible time.
And they were like, well, Reagan's only 16. We need someone with her. And so they brought this character back because Kitty Wynn was willing to do it.
I wonder why they still refused, you know, when it was mostly Friedkin that had done the thing. Maybe they didn't understand quite the movie they were making, although it was right there in the script, in the book, you know?
Yeah.
And these are the people that were like, I was made for this role. And they're like, no. So I don't know.
I wonder,
Maybe they did read the script and they knew it was a pile of garbage.
I mean, that's possibly true. Or maybe they just thought the first one was so good they didn't need a sequel to it. I mean, how often do we talk on the podcast about unneeded sequels or reboots, right?
Well, also back then, sequels weren't really a thing, too, right?
No, you're right.
She probably thought it was the concept of it was, I mean, like other than like The Godfather Part 2, I don't even know if that was out by then. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, that was pretty much the beginning of the big sequels, like as far as like a mainstay, right? And that was like, and then Star Wars and Indiana Jones, things like that. Those were the sequels, right? And there was not many of those. I think there was pretty thin on the ground, if not almost completely non-existent.
Especially for horror movies. I think, like, by and largely, movies were one-offs. And if there were sequels, it was told in a story, like, sometimes decades later, right? And so, yeah, I think we have The Exorcist II, The Heretic to thank for horror sequels.
Mayhaps. I don't know.
Yeah, at least tentpole ones, right? Rounding out the stacked cast is James Earl Jones, the voice of Darth Vader.
Kokomo.
Kokomo.
And Mustafa.
I cannot get over his name in this movie. I just died.
Yeah, we got Ned Beatty as Edwards, Karen Knapp as the voice of Pazuzu, and Dane Plato as Sandra Fowler.
I don't remember that character, and it says uncredited. Dana Plato obviously is from Different Strokes, right?
Different Strokes.
Yeah, the TV show.
Yeah. Well, we have two differing opinions. We both feel like this movie's kind of a dumpster fire, but we both have different opinions as to why.
Yeah, so my problems with this movie really fall to like story and ideas and things that are happening in the movie, right? And also script. I think the dialogue is just ridiculous.
Some of it is, yeah.
But I mean, the idea of Reagan's treatment, like psychologically, right, in these really bizarre settings make no sense to me. The fact that they are trying to hypnotize her and then like mind meld, you know what I mean? Like it's completely unbelievable, right? And it's set in sort of a realistic setting to me, but
inside an exorcism movie.
Yeah, I mean, exorcisms are a thing, you know what I mean? There's like religious stuff behind it, but there are ways to hypnotize people, but you cannot like sync your mind up enough to like be in a situation or try to save someone from their own mind. Like, it doesn't
Everyone
work
has
that
their own
way.
sunken place.
I mean, and this is mine. But I think the movie looks good to me. I think it's styled well. Like I like the production values. Like I even like the camera on top of a fucking like locust flying through Africa. I don't know. Maybe I was just really fucking stoned.
Yeah, probably, because I mean, we just mentioned Star Wars, right? And the locust scene looks just horrible, right? The miniatures look horrible. And yet Star Wars was made for less money. I mean, I know there was greater minds and, you know, as far as technical minds and probably and things like that, ILM had just been invented or was, you know, still a sparkle in the eye of you know, George Lucas.
Right.
And there wasn't a huge special effects industry maybe by this time, like there is, certainly not like there is today.
No.
You know? And this is really before computer effects and everything, and everyone was having to do like, you know, screen on screen and things like that. And I don't know, a lot of trickery and miniatures and things like that, but it just wasn't done well. This is not a director, I don't think, who really knew how to do that yet and wasn't super interested in that, was really relying on his production partners. Personally, I think the story is there. The premise is there. I like that it kind of dot connects why the demon has gone after these people from fucking Iraq to like Georgetown. You know what I mean? It kind of connects those dots for me. I kind of like the background and the mystery and stuff like that. It's the execution that's fucked. The screenplay's a little bit fucked based on the story. There's parts of it that work. And then parts of the script work, parts of it are horrible, dumpster fire. And then I like some of the production design, but the special effects, visual effects, and some of the production design is so stylized and just bad looking that it's almost unforgivable, as many of our reviewers said. But I feel like the story is there. It's just the execution was piss poor.
I mean, and I can see your points, and I get it. I think maybe in the moment I was just like enjoying that aspect of the movie a hell of a lot more than what was being said or what was being presented to me in a story fashion, right? And so I don't know. I think we can agree that all of it's kind of bad.
Well, and this kind of conversation is going to happen again over on Patreon because we're going to be discussing those prequels. And they were both based on the same stories, same screenplays, right? By two different directors and two different casts.
Just a year apart.
Yeah. And so it's kind of, it's almost unlike anything else. It's an opportunity to look at two different production teams, two different, mind spaces going towards the same story and everything, and how directing matters and things like that. Although both are piles of shit, one is less stinky than the other.
That is true. I have not seen them since they were released, so I'm looking forward to that conversation.
I would have loved it if one was good and one was bad based on the same story, to really kind of show us that, the production design decisions on the day matter. Design matters, technical ability to pull things off matters. I can't imagine try and see Boorman trying to do Alien or Aliens or something, and not having a mind for this sort of thing. And it would have been a pile of shit and we wouldn't have Alien or Aliens or Star Wars or things like that if he had been behind these things.
I think a lot of the conversation about sequels to The Exorcist, or prequels for that matter, need to sort of hinge on whether or not we need sequels or prequels to The Exorcist, right? We're going to talk about The Exorcist III next week and probably a longer deep dive. This is more of a shallow dive, right? Yeah. But I like that movie. Spoiler alert,
Exorcist III?
Yeah, I have things to say about it. I think it's better than this one for sure. But did we even need that? I feel like The Exorcist itself is such a good movie, such a classic movie. And it's just really part of pop culture and filmmaking lexicon that it didn't need anything else added to it. The only reason this movie was made is because it made money, right?
Yeah, I think it was mostly, the studio trying to capitalize, right? And I think that's what a lot of the actors and people that would have come back were recognizing. Obviously, they didn't get any, input from Blatty or Friedkin, and they just kind of went with it and did their own thing. And a lot of people kind of rejected, being a part of it. Versus Exorcist III, there was a little bit more interest, I think, just because it was Blatty and his story and based on his, although he tried to do a screenplay and Friedkin refused. And then he turned it into a book and it was a bestseller. And then he turned it back into a screenplay and then decided to do it himself after involving some other directors that eventually backed out. But anyway, that's a whole other deep dive.
And I'm super ready to talk about that.
Yeah, I really want to talk about that movie.
I know. A lot more than this one. I don't really know. Do you think that, and I haven't heard her talk about this, but do you really think that Ellen Burstyn has separated herself from being in The Exorcist? Do you think she regrets that?
It could be multiple things. She had, really long-term back damage from that. She probably didn't want to do a physical role like that again. She probably, like I said, sequels were kind of thin on the ground, and some actors refuse outright to do sequels, right? As a principle.
And I get that. I really hope, though, that Ellen Burstyn looks back on her role in The Exorcist fondly, right? Because it was a star-making turn for her, and she's so good, not just physically, but emotionally, right? She's a really good actress in that movie, and I would hate to think that she regrets being in it.
Maybe in retrospect, because even Linda Blair, she had to have protection for 6 months.
Yeah. After
it, who knows the death threats and letters and everything else and what it did for their immediate career in the next 10 years.
And I get the PTSD of it all. I
don't remember Ellen Burstyn again until the 90s.
Well, she has a long film career. Maybe she's just not on the tip of everyone's tongue.
No.
Was it until that Oscar nom? in the 90s.
For the Requiem?
Or like early 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so this movie, as bad as it is, to me is still kind of fun. You know what I mean? Like I had a really good time laughing at it this time. I made lots of notes, right? Which are funny to me and I won't repeat to them, but like some of the dialogue is just so good. There's this one scene where Linda Blair is talking to a child in that.
Or so bad it's good.
Yeah. Talking to a child in that, psychiatrist area. And she's like, oh, what's the matter with you? And the child's like, well, I'm autistic. And then she tries to explain to Reagan what autism is. And the girl asks Reagan, what's wrong with you? And she's like, oh, I was possessed by a demon, but it's okay. He's gone now. So I'm like, come on.
Well, that's just it's kind of almost reflective of the character, because that was basically the best thing about this movie is Linda Blair's character. She's has a life on the screen. I'm kind of surprised she didn't like move on into bigger roles or other things. And we've talked about this before, I think in the last episode when we talked about The Exorcist, about Linda Blair. But she's probably the best thing about this movie, really.
I completely agree with you. I think that she looks great in this movie. I think
she's charismatic. She's magnetic.
Yes, all those things. And she doesn't look 16 to me. You know what I mean? Like she looks a lot older.
Yeah.
I kind of wish they would have made her a little bit older, like college age or something like that, and really like had her by herself. I don't think we need Sharon's character in this movie. Really, she has some things to do, but. Yeah. I mean, I think Linda Blair was good. I think Louise Fletcher is good in this movie as well. But I mean, she's just being Louise Fletcher. But
I don't know. Like she's so cardboard in the first half of the movie. I think she starts getting, a little bit more excited about the role maybe in the second half. Maybe that's just the way she talks.
It's just the way she looks too. She looks like cardboard. I mean, like she's so straight faced in everything she does. Have you seen Flowers in the Attic? Right.
You know who I really wish had played that role?
Huh?
The older lady from Poltergeist.
Dr. Lesh.
Dr. Lesh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, that would have been much better.
Yes.
Oh, my God. I can see it in my head right now. But Richard Burton, though, like, I'm sure he's rolling over in his grave right now. Listen to us talk about this. But he's giving us his best Dr. Loomis through a lot of it, right? Like, evil or whatever.
Yeah. And that's how,
So. Okay.
Evil has gone from this place.
Well, thank God.
I do want to talk about some of the production design a little bit. I know we touched on it a little bit, but that office.
Oh, my God.
The office, like, it's worth watching the movie just to see that, like, that therapy office or whatever the fuck that was supposed to be. All the glass, it was like a honeycomb, right?
Yeah.
It was honeycomb. Everything was kind of like octagonal or hexagonal or something, and all of it's glass. And all the therapists are in either group sessions or single sessions inside those little offices where you can see everyone.
Yeah.
And it was it took me out of the movie every time they were in there, but it was still kind of cool. I kind of want to it's almost like a hall of mirrors in a way.
Yeah.
And I almost want to I wish they'd kept that set or something so we could explore it. And I wish that really existed somewhere. I need to look it up to see if it's actually a thing or if it was all set.
That would be the best Airbnb.
Because that was a large set.
Like you rent out a little apartment, but you can see everyone else's, but somehow black out the glass or whatever, even though they weren't.
Yeah. No, she blacks out the glass or whatever to make it more private. But what she's actually doing, and you can tell, is dimming the lights everywhere else in the building. Because you can see the shadows lengthening, from people. And so she just plunges everyone else in the darkness to where she's actually center stage and not private at all. So it was just really jarring to me. I'm like, dude, it's look what you're doing. Look at the fucking dailies. I don't know what to tell you. It's not working.
Well, if he's cutting the movie again after it's in theaters, right? And it's just not working out even then, God knows how many edits they made to this movie.
I don't know.
So I had texted my cousin when I was watching this because she's a social worker who works more in therapy, right? And I was like, how do you feel about having a therapy session in all glass where everyone can see inside? And she's like, there's no way in the world that the patient will respond to anything like that. And I'm like, I agree. So, I mean, it's completely unbelievable from that standpoint.
I was talking with Matt about that. I was like, he's like, I don't know how I feel about all these people with special needs and disabilities, being kind of on parade here versus, and it was done fairly empathetically, I thought. So I'm kind of on the fence too, but I was like, maybe it makes them feel more safe.
Maybe.
When they can see outside, they can see other people getting therapy. They can't hear anything, but,
Well, and it really, the entire environment seemed to be about those kids with special needs and not really about someone going through therapy. Reagan seemed out of place.
You can hear everything because I remember they shut the door and you could hear all the the audience and not audience, but everyone else in the building. You could still hear this light.
Because it's just glass. Hubbub.
You could hear all the hubbub.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would love to go explore and stay in a place like that, but for the purposes that they were using that set for in the movie, it doesn't really work.
I do have to say that skyscraper apartment or whatever that she was on with like the dove barn or whatever on
Outside?
Where she could just jump off if she wanted to because there's no railing or there's gaps in the railing or whatever. That might make an appearance on a top 10 real estate or whatever.
We've got to do that episode because I completely agree with you. Another really good Airbnb. We should look and see if these things still exist, or at least that apartment. If they have it, we're going to stay in it.
Oh, yeah.
So, out of 5 stars, what would you rate The Exorcist II?
I gave it a 2
I gave it 2.5
because I felt like it had some merit.
I agree.
I don't think it's completely a pile of it's a pile of shit, but it's not like on fire.
Right. It's not a flaming pile of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a really good time watching it. Like I was actively enjoying myself watching the movie. And I mean, that is worth at least like half a star to me. So
yeah, after seeing that trailer with all the I thought it was just going to be completely batshit, and I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised that it was kind of still fairly linear and able to understand and everything. But still, I don't feel any compunction to go back and watch this.
I'll probably be watching it again for quite some time. Although I would still recommend people go see it if you have not. Like, be a completionist.
Yeah, sure.
Go watch it. Yeah, it's okay.
It's not going to traumatize you in any way, shape, or form unless you're, well, maybe it will.
There's no trauma involved for the viewer.
The trauma of lost time.
I mean, maybe you might be a little pissed you didn't get that like 2 hours back or whatever, but it's okay. It's Kokomo. You get there fast and then take it slow.
I like to do like a steel drum band.
You're better off going to Key Largo or Montego.
Who want to take you?
Down to Kokomo?
All right, guys, I think that about wraps up our shallow dive into Exorcist II. Have you seen it? Have you ever seen it? Let us know what you thought of it by reaching out to us at The Film Flamers on social media.
Or you can email us at tiredqueens@filmflamers.com or call our hotline at 972-666-7733.
We'll take you to Kokomo.
We'll get there fast.
And then we'll take it slow.
No, we're going to take it fast. Because we have to get that movie over with.
In fact, just fast forward.
Like we said earlier, we have another episode coming out for you next week. More from the Exorcist franchise, where we talk about Exorcist III.
Yeah, and watch out for this one. Although it's not a perfect film or even really a good or great one, it does have probably the scariest jump scare in any horror movie ever.
And a lot of really excellent monologues.
Or just a lot of monologues.
All right, Chris. Well, after that conversation, I think I need to go off and fly on the wings of evil.
And have some sweet dreams.
Pazuzu! Lord of Evil in the air. Whatever.
Call me by my dream name.
I forgot. Montero too.
Kazoo?
Kazuzu? Oh my god.
It'd be funny every time the demon's near you hear a kazoo.